Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho. It is a Friday, the 14th of February. A happy Valentine's Day to all. We're here to bring you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Stories that matter today. Former President Rodrigo Duterte slams the Marcos administration at the PDP-Laban campaign rally last night. Duterte criticized Marcos' slow action on high commodity prices.
Alam mo, pag nasa gobyerno ka, ikaw yung nagdadala, you cannot give promises. Panay na lang ang pangako mo and you keep on, promising people for so many things.
Vice President Sara Duterte gives her support to the PDP-Laban senatorial slate. But VP Sara missed the proclamation rally as she is in Japan with her sister Kitty Duterte. Over on the other side, Alyansa para sa Bagong Pilipinas candidates defend President Bongbong Marcos from negative campaigning accusations. And despite the deportation order, more than 11,000 POGO workers are still in the Philippines. That's according to the Bureau of Immigration. Welcome to our program Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first up on the agenda, former President Rodrigo Duterte hit back at President Bongbong Marcos during the proclamation rally of PDP-Laban in San Juan yesterday.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte endorsed the 9 senatorial candidates under PDP-Laban during their proclamation rally in San Juan. In his speech, Duterte accused Marcos of making empty promises, particularly on addressing the rising cost of basic goods.
Bukang hindi niya kaya na habulin yung presyo. Yan na lang sa pagkain. Huwag na yung iba. Pwede na natin yung graft and corruption. Nandyan yan eh. Baski anong klaseng administrasyon. Pero yung immediate, urgent need to solve is really itong presyo or the price of rice. Alam mo, pag nasa gobyerno ka, ikaw yung nagdadala, you cannot give promises. Panay na lang ang pangako mo and you keep on, promising people for so many things.
The event also saw Senator Bato de la Rosa hitting back at Marcos' earlier remark that his senatorial bets had no blood on their hands due to tokhang.
Ang kinakailangan na madumihan ng dugo ng masamang tao aking kamay para maprotektahan ang buhay ng mga matitino, mababait at mga law-abiding citizen. Gagawin ko po yun.
Other PDP-Laban senatorial candidates, including Attorney Vic Rodriguez, Representative Rodante Marcoleta, and Attorney J.V. Hinlo, also took turns criticizing the Marcos administration.
Ang suka ang kalaban ng tanso. Ang suka ang kalaban ng pekeng ginto. Meron akong diploma at nakapagtapos ako ng abogasya. At higit sa lahat, meron akong certificate na nagpapatunay na ako ay isang ganap na abogado. Kaya ako ay natutuwa kung ito man ang Team Suka. Isa po akong proud member ng Team Suka.
Alam natin kung bakit napakataas ng pangunahing bilihin sa ating bansa. Yung hindi kumakain ng suka, hindi nila alam yun.
Gusto niyo ba na ma-impeach si VP Sara? Gusto niyo bang matanggal si VP Sara? Gusto niyo bang hihina ang PDP sa 2028? Gusto niyo bang labanan ang Rimeng Marcos sa 2028? Ipanalo niyo ang mga senador natin this 2025.
The PDP-Laban slate also includes Senator Bongo, Raul Lambino, Jimmy Bondoc, Philip Salvador, and Apollo Kibuloy. In the latest Pulse Asia survey, only Senators Bongo and Bato de la Rosa from PDP-Laban have made it to the Magic 12.
Amid impeachment and criminal complaints, Vice President Sara Duterte was seen in Japan. Duterte appears to be traveling and bonding with her sister Kitty Duterte. Now, this snap is one of many photographs Kitty posted on her Instagram and TikTok accounts. Sara flew to Japan on February 12 and will return to the Philippines come February 24. Meanwhile, Sara released a message of support for PDP-Laban bets in the midterm elections. She said these candidates are, quote, karapat-dapat, tapat, at matyagang naglilingkod sa bayan. Meanwhile, more groups are urging the Senate to act on the impeachment proceedings against Vice President Sara Duterte. The Makabayan Bloc is planning a mass mobilization event along with other groups that filed the impeachment to pressure the Senate into taking action. Bayan Muna echoed the call, emphasizing that the Senate must begin the trial promptly as mandated by the Constitution, and that delays have no legal justification. While some House leaders support the call, they clarified that they respect the Senate's decision regarding the matter.
When you say immediate, dapat agaran. You go out of your way para magawa agad if it's immediate. Yun yung forthwith. So in my opinion na that's what should be done.
Kami naman dito sa House of Representatives, syempre, nire-respeto rin po namin yung jurisdiction nila. Pero dapat makinig din po siguro sila sa pulso ng nakakarami.
Now let's talk about VP Duterte and the legal and political challenges she is facing. We have with us this morning Attorney Tranquil Salvador III, who is joining us via Zoom. He was a defense lawyer during the Corona impeachment trial. Magandang umaga sa iyo, Attorney.
Good morning, Gretchen, and good morning to everyone watching you this morning.
Attorney, there is a slew of issues surrounding the Vice President now. On one hand, there is the impeachment. On another hand, there is the NBI. There is the NBI recommending charges to be filed to the DOJ. Let's start with this debate over grave threats, because there seems to be that argument that that this threat made by the Vice President was conditional. In fact, former Justice Secretary Juan Ponce Enrile mentioned that no criminal charge could be made at this time because it is conditional. Your thoughts on that?
Okay, let me share my thoughts on this. I will not directly address the statement of our esteemed presidential advisor, but let me just present to you what is grave threats, as provided for under the revised penal code for a better understanding. I think we have to take note that grave threats could be committed against a person, against his honor, against his property. And please take note that the subject of a grave threat is a crime. So it is a crime. And number 3, there should be a serious intent to commit the crime. Please take note that an intent is a condition of the mind. So that should be coupled with manifest acts. We cannot read the mind, of course, but the one of the requisites is serious intent. So therefore, the manifest act should be a reflection of the intent of the person who wants to commit the crime. The fourth one is, which is very important, is how the supposed victim would have appreciated or would have perceived the threat. So if it created upon the mind of the supposed victim fear, intimidation, as in this case, a threat to life, then they would say, probably yes. That is why it's very important for us to know the elements of the same. Now, some will say, it was never in fact committed. That is the essence of grave threat. It was not committed, because if indeed the crime was committed, the person will have to be prosecuted based on the crime that was actually committed, if indeed it was pursued. That's how it is. These are the elements of the crime. Now, having said this, I think one of the things that they will ask would be, do you think grave threats have been committed? And do you think grave threats has been committed based on a video clip. Okay. Now, the challenge here for the investigators would have been, are there other evidence? Okay. So, as we know, the National Bureau of Investigation has actually forwarded a complaint to the Department of Justice. Let us have a better understanding of what this is. The National Bureau of Investigation has the power to investigate. In fact, any other crime, they have the power to investigate. Thereafter, after a sufficient investigation, and they're convinced that probably a crime is committed, they will forward it to the Department of Justice, the complaint. And the Department of Justice will now conduct a preliminary investigation. So it's not yet in court. They will conduct a preliminary investigation. And I think, as stated, and the Department of Justice recently issued a circular, they said for every person who is being sued for a crime, they will have to pass through. Okay? The prosecution will have to determine whether there is reasonable certainty of conviction. I will repeat, reasonable certainty of conviction, that is the quantum of proof for the department to decide whether to file it. And that is a prima facie case. This is relatively new. And I mentioned the elements of the crime because of this quantum. It is necessary for them to be able to be satisfied to file the case eventually.
Okay, let me bring the statement of the Vice President back, just for people to remember what she actually said in that Zoom conference. Ito, ilalabas natin yung kanyang sinabi. Ito, may kinausap na ako na tao, sinabi ko sa kanya, pag pinatay ako, patayin mo si BBM, si Liza Araneta, at si Martin Romualdez. No joke, no joke. Nagbilin na ako, ma'am. Pag namatay ako, huwag ka tumigil hanggang hindi mo mapapatay sila. And then he said yes. This statement was done through the medium of an online conference.
Yes, yes.
According to Article 282 of the Revised Penal Code, do you think this video would suffice as reasonable, prima facie evidence for reasonable certainty of conviction?
And that's why I gave you. Now, I would like to be very clear. I'm not the Department of Justice. And I do not intend, I don't want to intend to pass judgment and second guess them. That is what a lawyer should do, especially at this time when there are varying views on the matter. I think a lawyer will have to guide the public as to what it is, right? And you would want to hear what I have to say. But again, I will tell you, I'm not the Department of Justice, but trying to address that based on the elements of the offense, okay? And the public might be listening to us at this point. The question is now, was there an intent, to cause harm or a threat to cause harm? Yes. Number one, there was an intent to cause harm. Second, was it a condition? Because under Article 282, there is a condition. There is a condition of committing the certain act. So there was a wrong, a crime, there was a threat. Now the question is, would that amount to grave threat? Some would say that it was taken out of context, right? Snippets were taken and then it was brought out. So again, this is where the Department of Justice will have to come in. Is it a crime? Second, was there a seriousness to commit the crime? Was there an intent on the part of the Vice President? And how did the supposed victim, perceive that statement? I think those are material things for us to see. And, it would be, of course, at this time where everything is instant, we would want instant answers to questions. But I think a case like this would require the Department of Justice not only to examine the video, but likewise to examine the records. There are witnesses who could attest to what is said.
Okay, alam din natin na iba-iba pa yung bigat ng penalties, kasi dun sa ilalim ng Article 282 ng Revised Penal Code, meron pa yung may condition, yung iyong threat, tapos na-fulfill, yung gusto mong gawin nung threatened mo. At meron pa yung hindi na-fulfill, so, mas mababa yung penalties nun. At meron din pala yung without condition at all. So kung sinabi ni Justice Secretary Juan Ponce Enrile na wala naman itong condition, could this possibly fall under the third one, yung pinaka mababaw yung parusa?
Let me explain Article 282. Article 282 covers state threats, and it covers a wrong that you will do against another by reason of a crime. Okay? And the threat could be a demand for money or a condition. If the crime was not committed, 1 degree, or if the crime was attained, okay, the threat, I'm sorry, not the crime, the threat was attained, then 1 degree lower. But if the threat was not attained, 2 degrees lower. Sabi mo, may gulo naman yan, attorney. But let me explain this. Of course, the baseline would always be the threat will be the crime that we plan to commit. So for example, let us just paint a picture for your listeners. Let us say the threatened crime is homicide. The threatened crime is homicide. The penalty for that would be, the penalty for homicide would be reclusion temporal, if I'm not mistaken. That would be a penalty of around 12 years to 20 years. For example, this is just for example. Now, let us say that there was a threat, of course, it did not happen, and that's 2 degrees lower, of course, 2 degrees lower. 2 degrees lower than reclusion temporal would be presyon correctional. Ano ba yung pinagsasabi mo, attorney? Well, presyon correctional would be 6 years, 6 months and 1 day, the maximum of 6 years. So you will, what I'm telling you is a range. That is why this is where the judge will have to come in. What were the circumstances? What were their qualifying circumstances? What were their aggravating circumstances? Were there mitigating that would lessen the penalty for the crime? These are the things that the judge will have to consider. But the Department of Justice will not yet look at that. That is the duty of the judge. The Department of Justice will look into whether can this be filed in court? Can she be indicted? Is there? So this is subject to criminal information.
Correct.
And, yeah.
All right. Let's go to the other issue hounding the Vice President, which is the looming impeachment trial. Given the timelines that the Senate seems to be taking with this, the Senate President expressed the possibility of holding the trial right after the State of the Nation address.
Yes.
Could that be unconstitutional, given that the Constitution mandates the trial to be done forthwith? Your thoughts on the timeline and the direction of the Senate?
I'm aware of the statement of the Senate President. And he said quite clearly that he said, we will proceed. He said that there was already an impeachment complaint filed before them. The process in the House of Representatives has been completed. It's already in the Senate for trial. Now, that was his statement. He also stated that this, you may have varying views on the matter, he said. You may have varying views. He said that there are just 6 session days from after the Senate resumes their session sometime in June. He says it is next to impossible to complete the process at that point in time. But he says, I will, when we resume on the 20th Congress, we will continue. Listen to his statement. He said, well, we will proceed. You file a case against us. If you get a temporary restraining order, unless you get a temporary restraining order, I think I heard that in his statement. Unless you get a temporary restraining order, we will proceed. That's why, time and time again, I've been saying that this may raise a legal question. So this may raise a legal question. You're asking me a legal question. It is the Supreme Court or any court in the Philippines will be in a better position to say, because this is special. When I say not special, this is unique in a sense that it is a question presented to us only now. We've had impeachments in the past, but we have not been confronted with a situation where it is during the election season and wherein the sessions of our Congress will have to be interrupted or suspended because of an election. That's why I'm saying it's unique.
Could it be possible to file a case at the Supreme Court to hasten the process?
Well, it's always a possibility. You know, the 1987 Constitution has a provision under Article 8 that whenever you would want to question an act of any agency of government, and that extends to any branch of agency of government, if it was with grave abuse of discretion, amounting to lack or excessive jurisdiction, that is a constitutional process under Article 8 of the Constitution. So, pwede. And we've seen this time and again. We've seen this in the anti-terrorism law. We've seen this in the RH bill. We've seen this quite so often. wherein interested individuals, if they believe they have locus standi, meaning they have standing to question it, they will come forward. So we're not saying they do it, but this is just a discussion. It has to be a question. That could be an option.
On a final note, do you think if ever they continue it in June 2, pwede ba itong tumawid from the 19th to the 20th Congress?
Again, I would say that's part of the legal question. Because
Okay,
remember,
all right.
there has been no instance of this kind of impeachment where it crosses from one Congress to another. That's why I'm saying this is something that they have to seriously look into. But the Senate has already spoken, and they will have to proceed, and that will have to be respected, unless, as he said, the Senate President said.
Well, as Senator Francis Tolentino pointed out, we are currently in a constitutional limbo. All right, thank you so much for weighing in on that with us, on the cases recommended by the NBI as well as the impeachment trial. We have Attorney Tranquil III.
Thank you, Gretchen. Good morning to everyone.
All right, coming up, more than 11,000 POGO workers are still in the Philippines, as according to the Bureau of Immigration. And that is despite the POGO closures and deportation order. Don't go away. We will be back with more stories after the break. Welcome back. You're still with us here on Morning Matters. The administration ticket went to vote-rich city Iloilo to woo voters on Thursday. The Alyansa para sa Bagong Pilipinas bets defended their sponsor, President Marcos, from accusations that he's resorting to negative campaigning. Recall that during the party's kickoff in Lawag, Marcos denigrated their opponents over Tokhang, or the drug war, formally, and the pivot to China.
He was merely stating facts. Sabi ko nga, speculation ito. Baka naman merong mga seryosong threat, security threat, hindi lamang sa kanyang administration, kundi sa kanyang sariling buhay.
We are for Philippine sovereignty, hindi ba? And none of us are against extrajudicial killing. No, so I don't see anything wrong with that.
It will be more on performance-based. That's yung po ang pag-usapan po namin. Hindi po namin aatakehin yung kabila. Sabi nga natin, we don't like that negative publicity.
Senator Raffy Tulfo raised concerns over the number of foreign POGO workers still in the Philippines. During a Senate hearing, it was revealed that out of 30,144 foreign POGO workers, only about 10%, or 3,024, had been deported so far. However, the Bureau of Immigration later clarified that over 22,000 foreign POGO workers had already left by the end of 2024, leaving over 11,000 still in the country. The BI attributed the delay in deportations to the completion of necessary documents, including passports, NBI clearance, and plane tickets. In response, Tulfo gave the BI a 2-week deadline to ensure the deportation of all remaining POGO workers.
Kine-question ko yung bagal ng sistema di ba? Baka nag-aantay na kahit ng pang-areglo. I'll give you a deadline that they should be deported siguro in 2 weeks. Do something about it. Kung gusto, maraming paraan.
The Philippine Coast Guard vessel BRP Cabra successfully drove away the Chinese Coast Guard vessel CCG 3304, which had approached within 43 nautical miles off Bolinao, Pangasinan. Using exceptional seamanship, the PCG pushed the Chinese vessel to 101.44 nautical miles off Bani, Pangasinan. Another Chinese vessel, CCG 3103, later arrived in the area but was also confronted by the BRP Cabra. The PCG continues to patrol the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ, to assert the country's maritime rights and prevent illegal foreign activities. Meanwhile, former COVID-19 Task Force Chief Implementer Vince Dizon has been named as the new transportation chief. Gerard de la Peña with the details.
After weeks of speculation that there will be a changing of the guards at the Department of Transportation, Malacanang finally broke the news. Vince Dizon is the new DOTR chief. He replaces Jaime Bautista, who, according to a DOTR statement, is stepping aside because of health issues. Bautista's resignation takes effect after office hours on February 21 to give him time to fulfill prior official commitments. According to Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin, the Office of the President has given Dizon the go signal to coordinate with Bautista's team for the transition. The new DOTR secretary has been in government service for more than 2 decades. Dizon's last posting was as president and CEO of the Bases Conversion and Development Authority, which played a major role in the Build initiative of the Duterte administration. Prior to that, he was the presidential advisor and deputy chief implementer of the COVID-19 task force, also during former President Digong's term. Immediately before his appointment as Transportation Secretary, Dizon was with the private sector. He is coming in after Bautista's 32-month stint at the DOTR that had its share of controversies. Perhaps the most notable was a breakdown of CAAP's air traffic management system on New Year's Day in 2023. This resulted in the closure of the entire Philippine airspace, delaying all flights and causing mayhem at the NAIA. But there were also major wins in the transport sector under Bautista's watch. NAIA was privatized and is now under the stewardship of San Miguel Corporation, while the much-contested PUV modernization program was also implemented. Still, Manibela Chairman Marvel Bueno believes Bautista's resignation is proof they were right all along about the PUV modernization program. Manibela has called for Bautista's resignation for months. Valbuena also says he hopes to have a dialogue with the new Transportation Secretary soon to talk about their group's issues and suggestions. On the other hand, the Passenger Forum acknowledged that while they oppose some of Bautista's policies, his time was marked with progress too. For instance, his decisive action in preventing the closure of the EDSA busway. They hope that the new younger Secretary Dizon will bring with him fresh perspectives and urge him to prioritize meaningful reforms and move beyond car-centric policies to resolve the transport crisis. But Transport Group Piston is skeptical. It claimed that Dizon was behind the eviction of thousands of Aitas in Tarlac when the new Clark City was constructed during his time as BCDA chief. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
In sports, the UAAP Season 87 men's and women's volleyball tournament kicks off this Saturday, February 15. Competing teams from 8 universities gathered in a press conference on Thursday. First to face off in both the men's and women's division are the UE Red Warriors and the UP Fighting Maroons. The first serve will happen at the Mall of Asia Arena.
Very exciting actually, and looking forward kasi lahat po ng schools ngayon mukhang ready to face the UAAP Season 87. It's a matter of fact lang kung paano or how confident we are every game. Yung in-adjust po talaga namin is yung connection inside, lalo na ang daming pong seniors before na nawala. So we have to rebuild everything talaga.
When we return, let's talk about genealogy and political dynasties with content creator Mighty Magulang, Mona Magno-Veluz. Don't go away. Morning Matters will be back. I'm Gretchen Ho, and this is Morning Matters. Joining us in the studio today on Valentine's Day is an autism inclusion advocate, a self-proclaimed history geek, very much known for her videos on genealogy. Please welcome Mona Magno-Veluz, popularly called Mighty Magulang. Hello, welcome to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Gretchen, and good morning to everyone.
A very interesting hobby you have on TikTok. I mean, these are long videos, you tracing the histories and the relatives of very popular families in the Philippines. I mean, how did you get to this?
I actually started with our own family. I started in the year 2000, doing our family tree, and then it snowballed from there. I was successful. I got to do it for other families, and during the pandemic, I got bored and I started doing it on TikTok.
Now, we wanted to have you here because we do know that families have been on the headlines lately, particularly political families. And now more than ever, political dynasties are being talked about. It seems to be a recurrent theme in Philippine politics. I wanted to find out the patterns that you've been seeing studying all of these popular families. Actually, sinabi nga ni Ben Tulfo nung isang araw na hindi raw sila political dynasty dahil wala silang baluarte. I mean, what is your definition of a political dynasty?
But I'd like to preface this by saying I feel that public service is something that is grown in the home. It is something that families kind of gravitate to because their ancestors or their parents were also public servants. Back to the question of what is a political dynasty. In the law, actually wala pa tayong law, but there have been drafts of anti-political dynasty laws. And those laws define dynasties as relatives, I think up to the fourth consanguinity, so 4 steps away for an apo and a lolo, for a pinsan. All of those are within a political dynasty inclusion criteria. Pero ang nagde-define po, hindi yung baluarte, but when they serve together to a point that it can create conflict of interest, it can prolong the family's hold on to power, and it can influence the normal course of government.
Pero kasi usually, tama nga po kayo, it is grown in the home, interest in public service, in politics. Nai-imbibe yun dahil kung nakakwento ni tatay, nakakwento ni tito. Sa inyong pag-aaral, ano yung unang pinakamatagal na political dynasty o pinakamalaki na political dynasty dito?
Marami sila.
Anong unang home yan?
Alam mo, ang dami. Like, even from the time the Spanish started creating encomiendas and we started having cabeza de barangay or gobernadorcillo, meron na po tayong mga political families that can connect up to that point. Napakarami nila. And I was telling you earlier, I wanted to do a series on political dynasties last year. And na-depress po ako.
Bakit?
Dahil ang dami masyado. There are about, in my, in what I've read, like 200 of them are called political dynasties today. About half of them can connect their roots up to the first Philippine Assembly. Ganun po kalala. And when you parallel that with all of the academic studies on the effect of political dynasties, lahat po sinasabi sa atin na it is bad for politics, it is bad for the economy, it is bad for those parasocial relationships that the electorate develop with the candidates. So it's bad on so many levels, pero we're still there. Andun pa rin tayo. And then we complain kung bakit hindi nag-iiba ang sistema ng gobyerno. But we still gravitate to the familiar surnames.
Do you think what we're seeing here in the Philippines is unique to us, or is it also very much around the world, in the democracies around the world? Or sa atin yan dahil sa ating history na sinakop tayo ng Espanya at nanggaling doon, close nitang family. Also, the other side of it is you need resources, you need connections to win, you need people around you to win, yung winnability ng kandidato. Sa inyong pag-aaral, I mean, is it because our democratic institutions are weaker than others, or nakikita mo rin sa ibang bansa yun?
I think we are, in our constitution, we do have an anti-dynasty provision. But it is against the interests of those who are going to draft the law to actually pass it. So from 1986 up to now, wala pa rin tayong anti-dynasty law. And if you compare ourselves with, for example, Indonesia, I think parallel lang. Parang pareho lang. But in other countries, European countries and in the US, what I am seeing more of are political legacies. So I want to differentiate that with a political dynasty. Kasi in the case of political legacies, meron silang ancestor, magulang, kapatid, or whoever, na nag-serve din. Pero hindi sila sabay. Hindi nagkaroon ng conflict of interest.
Okay.
Hindi nagkaroon ng possible collusion para mag-influence ng nangyayari at that time.
It will be difficult to define, no? Up to which consanguinity pwedeng tumakbo at kung kailan at yun na nga, no? I guess siguro dun sa ibang, yung political legacy, kumbaga parang sige siya muna, tapos pagka ako na.
Or si
diba?
Lolo, like
Okay.
a good example is Chel Diokno. Chel Diokno is a political legacy. Yung tatay niya, yung lolo niya, yung tatay ng lolo niya, lahat sila nagsilbi sa gobyerno at some point.
Pero
or
hindi
other.
sila sabay-sabay.
Never sila nagsabay.
So, would you classify the Tulfos now as an emerging political dynasty?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay, I want to go into the different prominent political families. Puntahan natin yan yung pag-trace ng kanilang genealogy. The Tulfos, what do we know of them?
Well, it's actually very interesting. Maganda yung story ng lolo nila at ng papa nila. Their lolo, for example, Ramon Tulfo, was a soldier who re-upped to fight the war, World War II. He died in Capas. He did the death march together with his son. Tapos pagdating nun, he died there. The son ended up, after the war, looking for Japanese collaborators and Japanese spies, which brought him to Davao. In Davao, he started interviewing the local community, which was where he met his future wife. The wife is of Japanese descent, and they got together because of that. And
Pero sundalo talagang pinanggalingan ng Tulfo family.
Yes.
Walang nanilbihan o naging opisyalis ng gobyerno.
Wala.
Nung
So sila yung generation nila yung una. Pero ang difference lang nun, kasi ngayon, for example, we have Senator Raffy, and kung swertihin, si Ben at saka si Erwin will also serve. Which means 3 out of the, how many? 12? Is it 12? Or 12 posts in the Senate would be theirs.
24.
Sorry, 24. So, the 24, 3
Pero
out of the 24.
meron din tayong mga Tulfo sa Kongreso.
Correct. So, meron pa sa Congress, posibleng 7. Imagine the political strength of that. Dahil ang nangyayari po sa gobyerno, hindi lang naman basta batas-batas yan. They say yes to certain treaties or like for example, the visiting defense, yung mga ganyan, sila mag-a-approve niyan. Yung mga lisensya para sa mga negosyo, sila din ang mag-a-approve niyan. So,
Okay, punta naman natin yung isa pang interesting video mo, no? That the Dutertes, the Marcoses, and the Romualdeses could be related. Oh, what did you find there?
they are actually related by marriage, distantly related by marriage. The half-brother of Imelda Marcos, Vicente Acereda Romualdez, has a wife whose last name is Veloso. And Veloso is a relative of the Dutertes. She is the third cousin of Rodrigo Duterte. So they are, by marriage, distantly related.
Malayo.
Malayo.
Sa mga nakikita nyo ba, talagang there's the high possibility that many of the political families are related to each other, maybe in marriage or...
Definitely. In fact, there is another genealogist and researcher, Todd Lucero, who's actually done a map of all of the Philippine presidents. And you can fit them on one page. They are related either by blood or by marriage.
So mahirap din talaga, ano? I mean, to break out of that cycle, if most of our leaders are, operating in that environment na magkakaano. Sila rin ang nakikita kasi,
exactly.
Diba?
And it is closely related to business. Kasi to be a politician requires money, and that suits their purpose. That if you are close to the seats of power and the seats of, financial power.
I want to talk about two other families that have been very, very, I think they have shaped Philippine history in magnificent ways, and that is yung Aquinos at yung Marcoses. You said that Chris Aquino and the First Lady are related.
Yes.
How so? Would you explain that family tree to us?
Right. It's actually quite simple because the maternal uncle of Chris Aquino, Pedro, married the maternal aunt of Lisa. So they are pinsans
Second
in
cousin,
that way.
third
No,
cousin.
they're related by
Cousin.
marriage because the tito of Chris and the tita of Lisa got married.
So, magkakaibigan ba yung ano? I mean,
I'm sure nagkikita-kita sila sa family reunion. Diba? You have to be friendly sa family reunion. Tita, beso-beso.
syempre, Araneta kasi si First Lady. Liza Araneta.
Yes.
Before
But
she
it's
married.
the Cacho side. So, the tita who married the Kuwango is a Cacho.
Okay. How about the Villars?
Okay. The Villars are actually, I would say, second, no, not the Villars, but the Aguilars. Si Manny Villar was the first of his family to be a national politician. Cynthia, however, is second generation. Kumbaga yung father niya was also a politician. And Cynthia's siblings are also into politics. So, tapos they all came together in Las Piñas, at least for the Aguilars. And for a national level, of course, we know that many of Manny Villar's children and also in-laws are in politics.
I remember you also saying in a video that the Dutertes, contrary to popular belief, they're not actually outsiders of the political realm.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, the father of Rodrigo Duterte came from a long line of politicians in Cebu and Danao and all of that. And they married into other political families and political dynasties. So they are connected to so many areas within Visayas and Mindanao.
How did you trace all of this? I mean, it must be really difficult work.
Well, we are very lucky because we have the Freedom of Information Law, where historical documents are something that we can access if we know where to look. So there are online resources like Family Search, Ancestry.com. There are crowdsourced websites like Genie.com. But of course, nothing beats the good old research, going to the library, going to the National Archives, and looking for...
And you do that yourself?
Oh, yes. I do.
How many hours do you spend?
It depends. It depends on the profile. There are some cities, there are some towns that have that we can find really old documents easily. But there are some, for example, Iloilo, where my father is from. As in, it was bombed during the war. So that's why my family tree is very heavy on my mother's side and then lopsided because of the absence of information on my dad's side. So depende yan.
Okay, so mamaya we'll talk about how to find your own genealogy and probably some love matters as it is Valentine's Day and you're my date for this morning. But all of that and more when Morning Matters returns. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still here on Morning Matters. We're still joined by Mona Magno-Veluz, popularly known as Mighty Magulang. And we talked about genealogy and we talked about rummaging through records. Which records do you rely on to be able to trace all of these family maps?
Okay, so when you do genealogy, you want to look for primary records. Primary records are records created during that time period. So birth records, civil records, the baptismal record. Baptismal records in the Philippines are interesting because usually it also includes your parents' names and your grandparents' names. It means that you have to learn a little bit of Spanish, but otherwise it's fun. We also use marriage records and death records. And kung hindi ka makahanap ng ganong records, you go for secondary sources, which would be newspapers, which would be books. So that is something that I use. Some families have like family books, which would document the myths in their
But how do you
families.
get access to that? I mean, from where you are, it must take a lot of resources and a lot of connections to get to those books.
I've been doing this for 20 years. So there is already a familiarity with where the repositories are.
Pero kayo ay nakakakuha rin ng record mula sa China.
It's possible, yes. I don't do it directly.
Because of course I know, I'm not gonna deny it. I'm Filipino-Chinese, and I have my roots there. Is it possible for you to trace where I come from?
Yes, because I can find a genealogist who can look for your family book or your clan book in China if it hasn't been destroyed.
So, pero isa pang problema doon sa nakikita ko, kasi pag minsan may mga kulang, di ba? Like for example, hindi naman sila kinasal, pero may relationship. Paano mo nakakahanap yung ganong?
You know, there was this news article last year. It was Todd Lucero also who successfully helped the family trace the father of Sergio Osmeña. That was a big question mark, a historical question mark for many years, and it was DNA that solved that mystery. And Todd facilitated that.
So you could also access that?
Well, if there is a specific, if you want to establish parentage, that's the way to go. DNA allows us to look for other family members. There are several providers out there where you could swab and then send it to a repository, and then they figure out who you could be related to. But that means that person also want to look for their relatives, and they've also swabbed.
In studying the political families in the Philippines, is there any surprising pattern that you saw? I mean, in terms of being prominent, being able to win in an election, meron pang parang common themes or patterns?
What I know and what we can see is that a lot of people would, if they have a prominent ancestor or family member, they would play on that. So, for example, when Grace Poe ran for president, she would have like a ghost of FPJ in the background of her poster. So they leverage off the good name of their ancestors if it's there.
But you also talked about family myths.
Yes.
How much have they helped you find the ancestries of these families?
I really don't work on myth. When they share it with me, I take it with a grain of salt. And in a lot of cases, when you try to look for documents that support those myths, oftentimes it's not there. So a lot of us claim that we descend from Spanish people, but the documents don't support it. Our president has long claimed that they descend from Limahong, for example, and the documents will be able to support that. There's no documentation. Limahong was a pirate, so he wouldn't register himself if ever he has a child, diba? So it's one of those things that you won't be able to test unless you can find an ancestor or a fellow descendant of Limahong, like from China, and you can compare your DNA.
Is there anybody in your studies that has stood out amongst all of these powerful families that was able to break through?
The example that I said earlier about Sergio Osmeña, that's one major breakthrough when it comes to research. But for everyone else, I think, for me, exciting yung when I find a connection to the royal family. I find a connection to an American founding father, but are Filipino. And there are some.
From here?
Yes, private individuals who have a direct line to
What
a
should
US
we
founding
understand in terms of our relationship with other countries like Spain, who we've had a history with, Japan, also America? I mean, what should we understand about how much we've been influenced?
when it comes to genealogy, I think one of the saddest things is that there is this perception that there is somebody 100% Filipino. Nationality has nothing to do with your ancestry. We are Filipinos, we love our country, but in our blood, it can carry Spanish, it can carry Japanese, it can carry Chinese. So our ancestry has nothing to do with our love for country.
And on Valentine's Day, is there anything you've found out?
Well,
when it comes to love and finding love?
I guess in connection then with the politics and the theme of the day, there are families who have been fighting like for a long time. My example would be the Marcoses and the I'm sorry, what's his name? Marcos and I forget his last name now. But yeah, one of the apos of Marcos, Mike, married Cara, who is the apo of his political rival. And I think at the end of the day, even if you fight over politics, even if it's election season and fighting is the way to go, love can still conquer all.
So meron pa rin mga intermarriages.
Yes.
How difficult would it be for us to have a stronger democracy and to actually fight political dynasties? Do you think it's possible in our lifetime? Or, I mean, according to what you've studied, it really is part and parcel already of Philippine politics?
Actually, the tips that you have for somebody who has been sawi in love is also the same as the tips you would tell the electorate when they're voting. Like, if they put you, if they let you down already, huwag kang bumalik, di ba? You deserve someone better. So, go down that road.
Pwede ba akong magpa-trace ng aking history and roots? If our viewers are interested in doing that, how do we even start?
Well, it is a very engaged process. So personally, I only do institutional clients and I only work with foundations and companies. But there are a lot of genealogists that you can find online. They have Facebook pages and you can reach out to them and ask for a quote depending on your objectives.
And how do you think this could help us learning our own genealogy?
It's the individual who will tell you why they want to do this. For some, they want to know if they can apply for dual citizenship in Spain. There are some who just need to understand where they came from because it is something that is always, I think, at the back of our heads. Maybe we're too busy to think about it, but sometimes when you're retired na and you have nothing else to, jump into, genealogy is one thing people go for.
Actually, minsan iniisip ko nga ako kasi yung lolo ng dad ko ay galing sa Guangzhou, China. But my mom has roots in Filipino and Spanish roots. So sometimes I think about tracing those lineages to be able to understand where you come from, what influenced you, and I guess to complete your sense of identity.
Yeah, and I recommend that you DIY. When you do it yourself, it is cathartic. It actually helps you.
The first place that we should go to is
FamilySearch.org.
FamilySearch.org, and then right after that,
it will lead you to the right direction.
Okay. I hope we also have that for love, right?
Yeah.
Just go type into a website and it will lead you into the right direction. Thank you so much for joining us today and being my date on Valentine's Day to know more a little bit about the families that surround us, maybe political or those just around us, and how much they've influenced Philippine society, and how love plays a factor in the building of those families. We have Mona Magno-Veluz, popularly known as Mighty Magulang on Morning Matters on this Valentine's Day. And before we go, I would love to end the program with this quote from Maya Angelou. Love recognizes no barriers. It jumps hurdles, leaps fences, penetrates walls to arrive at its destination full of hope. Gaya rin po yan ng aming ginagawa sa pagbabalita. Dito, talagang yun ang nilagay nila, ano? Kasi trabaho na lang ang ating minamahal. A happy Valentine's Day to everybody watching us on Morning Matters. And that is it for today's episode and this week's edition of Morning Matters. My name is Gretchen Ho. We are One News, all sides, all the time. Happy Friday.